Hi, I'm Dave Epstein. Welcome to Growing Wisdom. We have a little bit of a sun shower going on this afternoon, and we're talking about potting up tomatoes. So if you're like me and you start your seedlings inside, maybe you start them in a tray like this. Cell tray 5x10, and I've got different varieties of tomatoes in here. Now, these tomatoes will not get big enough to go directly from the cells into the garden. So we have to have an intermediary step. If you start them in a smaller cell, you may have to do what I'm about to do 2 or even 3 times. Some people do start them in pots like this, and then you don't have to do this step, but it can be a little bit more difficult because watering can be harder. The reason you start them in such a small area like this is because it's easier to keep the water even. If you start them in a big pot, very often it's too wet, and then the tomato seedlings, what's called damp off, or they rot and they break, and then they don't grow very well. So we're going to do one of the varieties here. I'm going to do what's called Defiant. Now, Defiant is one of my favorite varieties. It's a Johnny Selected Seeds variety. It's very disease resistant. It's a nice tasting tomato. That's why I like it. So I put in my garden a couple of varieties of Defiant every year. Notice I've got a lot more tomatoes than I'm probably ever going to be able to use, so I'll give them away to friends as well. So we've got a peat pot here. You could use a peat pot. You could use a cow pot, depending on what you want to do. We've got some Johnny's 512 mix, which is a nice soil mix that is evenly moist. I'm just going to add that in. So we're going to take one of the Defiant plants. Now I've made a couple of mistakes in here. Number one, I've got too many plants in each cell. So for example, here's a cell that I have 2 plants. I should have probably discarded this one ages ago. I could pot that up at this point. Notice the base of the tomato plant here. I'm going to plant that all the way up to those leaves. What's going to happen is roots will be sent out of the side of that tomato plant. So I'm going to plant it deeper than it is in the cell. So we'll put this in here. We'll make a little hole or a dibble. You can use a dibble tool. I just use this little espresso spoon I got in Europe. And what I'm going to do is we're going to add soil all around this very carefully. Now what that's going to do is going to allow new shoots to come out of the side. Notice the plant is now shorter. That's okay. It's going to be a much stronger plant. So the other thing you want to be sure to do is label the tomatoes, because if I just do this, I'm going to forget which variety it is. So Defiant, there's Defiant. Now, this can go back inside under grow lights, or I could put it in a cold frame, depending on what the temperatures are outside over the next couple of days. And that is one plant, one tomato plant that is potted up and ready to go. Remember, we still have this other one for now, just for the purposes of the video. I'm not ready to let this one go yet, so I'm just going to put it back in a tomato cell, and I'll think about what to do with it. So one Defiant tomato all potted up. So in a few more weeks, we'll put that in the garden, let it grow, and we'll start getting tomatoes sometime in late July or early August. For Growing Wisdom, I'm Dave Epstein.